Join us for a Real Life Virtual Summer Institute. Welcome to Google Forms and Slides. For Google Forms and Sheets. My name is Linda Stewart, and I'm your session host. I'm here to support the session presenter, who I will introduce shortly, offer technical assistance to participants, as well as share the session evaluation and certificate at the end of the session. Please don't hesitate to use the chat to ask questions or request technical support. At this time, I would like to introduce to you your session presenter, Aaron Wood.
Hey y'all, I'm excited to be with you guys today. I think we're going to go through some really good stuff. If you've been on one of my other sessions before, we're going to be doing some Google stuff similar to that, but we're going to do a deep dive into forms and sheets to kind of get that more specifically as some different aspects you can use inside of your classroom and also inside of your position as you guys are at, and just become a little bit more familiar with that and the power that that has for you. But as we do this, I'm going to be dragging and dropping over a lot of different things, so please forgive me for not looking in the camera. I've got 3 or 4 screens going, so I'm just pulling stuff over so I go through and look at different things. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and present my screen for you, or share my screen so that way you guys can see. And the first thing that you guys should be able to see is going to be that pre-session questionnaire. So that kind of gives me a little bit of information about you guys, and also send it in the link so I can go ahead and look at, you know, the different aspects of who you are, different things along those lines, so I can kind of tool a lot of things that we're going to do towards that. Mr. Payne has been phenomenal with making sure the materials are accessible on those Google folders online and for all those different things as well. And here in a second, I'm going to send you out a link to this presentation as well, so you can go ahead and make a copy of that. It's got a lot of embedded videos, a lot of embedded materials, and stuff along those lines. It looks like we have a little bit of a smaller group than what I was projecting, so that way we can kind of look at some different things and kind of have a little bit more discussion based off that, which is a little bit exciting. So I'm originally from Colorado, but I am currently serving as the assistant principal at Fairmont Elementary and Johnson City Schools. So prior to that, I was a high school testing coordinator, and prior to that, I was a biology and chemistry teacher. So I've kind of run the whole gamut of different positions and different things like that. And I will tell you, the one thing that has saved myself, especially during this closing, is Google Forms and Sheets. One of the things that I'm known for at the high school when I worked there was the answer is always a spreadsheet. So no matter what's going on, you can answer about anything with the spreadsheet. But on there, you'll notice the link to the presentation that you guys can do, or Mr. Payne has also sent it out as well, so if you want to do that. But what this link will do is this will have you make your own copy of that presentation, so you can save it on your Google Drive for your own future knowledge, because like I said, there is a lot of embedded stuff that's going to be going on inside of this presentation. There's my contact info, that's the most reliable. There's my email address and also my Twitter handle. I try to tweet out a lot of different tips, tricks, different information, as well as just be a resource in case other people have questions. And if you need to invite me to a file that you're having trouble with or stuff along those lines, that's what that email address is really beneficial for, because that gets me access to anything that you can see as well. But let's go ahead and let's dive in a little bit. So just in general, we're going to be looking at Google Forms and Sheets. Now, I like to talk about these two together because they play so well together. They really are hand in hand with how they access information, distribute information, and then how you can present that and use that to make those decisions that the data is going to be going for. Because especially during this closure, one of the things that has been really resonant in my head is my lead principal always tells me, she goes, we never want to be data rich and information poor. So we can have all the data that we want, but unless it means something, unless it has an application, that's where those changes are going to come from. That's where that big impact is going to happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to exit out here, and I'm just going to bring over a blank Google form. This is what you initially see whenever you just create a new form. So it starts off as an untitled form, untitled question. It's always this awkward purple color. I don't know why they chose that as their baseline, but it's what they want to go with. But what I want to do is I kind of want to slow walk you through the different options that are here, the different things that can happen on this form. Because if you're using Google Forms to collect information, which it is phenomenal for, the biggest thing that is the most important thing that you can do is set your form up right the first time. Because once you send that out, that's the information that you're going to get back. So as you go through that and as you kind of experience these, you can have that. So if you're in my first Google 101 session, you know that the first question on that survey was awful. It said, which option would you like? And only option 1 was available. So there's always ways to mistake. You can edit these things, you can go through, but what you can also see is the end result gives you data like this. So I'm going to bring over that pre-session questionnaire, and this is what I've received from you all so far just to start off with. So if you notice, just visually looking at the data, we've got a lot of pre-K through 8th grades. So we have that. So that's a majority of what we're going to look at. Those students are going towards independence, but are not necessarily fully independent with technology, especially inside of the rooms if you're not in a one-to-one setting. For current position, if you notice, this chart just looks like pure chaos. The difference is the type of question that I asked. This one had pre-selected options that you could choose. That restricts down the different option that happens. This one was a type in whatever you want response. So if you ask for students' names and you don't give them any structure to how you want them to give you that, you're going to get pure chaos as an answer. So that's what I'm going to kind of go through when we talk about building a question or building those things. How familiar are we? The most common answer was 3 with the secondary of 2. That's kind of what I'm seeing as a trend. If you were a 5, I'm not necessarily know if this would be a big benefit. You could pull maybe 1 or 2 things, but my goal is that by the end of the session, you're going to leave with an idea of like, man, I could have had that as a form this whole time and not have to do that on a piece of paper and send it out. So that's my goal, is to look at what's one thing in your daily lives and your daily teaching lives that you could use this for to develop in order to minimize the amount of time it takes for you to get actionable data to use with your students, or if you're in a leadership position, with your faculty. And then we have, are you currently using? Most are. And if we look at what they are using, Docs and Drive are by far the biggest heavy hitters that a lot of people use. So we also have forms that's on there. Forms and sheets are going to go hand in hand. But what we're going to look at is how can you use this to impact your classroom? So this is what end data can look like for an individual Google form. Now, if you notice, up here in the upper right-hand corner, it has an X in it. So that is the symbol for Google Sheets. That's the logo for Google Sheets. So let's say that you don't necessarily want to have your information in this. You want to be able to sort it, edit it, work with it, stuff along those lines. If you click that green button, what's going to open up is a spreadsheet of all of the answers that you've gotten on that form. Now it's automatically sorted by the time that they came in. So your first response will be your first row and so on and so forth. So if you notice, this is the second session that I've used this form. So the timestamps are June 10th. I had one fill it out on June 11th, so after the session, and then 12th, and then if you notice here, we have our 17th. So let's say that I forgot to get rid of one class period's answers before I start on the other one, and I don't want it to impact my data. What you can do is you can go ahead and sort by this little drop-down arrow. You can sort your information however you want. So let's say that I just want whatever happened today to be on the top so I can see those and I can look at, okay, these are the answers that I had today. I can work with these, I can understand these, I can go through that. But anything that is on a form will go through. If you notice, my questions are the top column. So that's what I mean by that. Now, previously, I've had what is an email address so you can be reached at as one of the questions on that form so I can reach back out. It wasn't on there, so it just left this empty ghost column. But by clicking that green square right there, that creates a Google Sheet based off of all of your form responses. So you can input those, you can edit those, and then we're going to look at a couple things you can do with that as well. You can choose if you're accepting responses or not, or if people can answer that just by sliding this. So if I slide this over, I can go ahead and say that, and then it can have a message to them saying, you know, I know for one of the ways I use this was an ACT registration. I could say the registration window, and if I could type closed on June 10th, please contact your counselor. So we'll go ahead and spell check that. So what will happen is if somebody goes to that link now, what they're going to see is this. The registration window closed on June 10th. Please contact your counselor. So if you have something that's going on where you want it to be a time-sensitive thing, maybe it's parent-teacher conferences you're trying to schedule. Maybe it's something like that, and the window for that is gone. You can have a message to the individuals who might click on that later to where they could do that. Now what's nice is this, if I go back, you can put websites in this. So you can go, and you can put a web address in there, and then when they go, they can go ahead and click on that web address, and you have a hyperlink in there as well. So you can do that. You can go ahead and have those different steps and those different things that are going on in order to do that. So any of those messages that are in there, you can put websites, you can put videos, you can put images, as long as they have a URL address on there. But that's the benefit of that. Now, in Google, there's this thing that I call the Snowman. So I don't know what the technical term for this thing is, but it's the three dots that are all on top of each other. What these three dots do is they open up a whole different panel of responses that you can get. So you can set it up to get email notifications for new responses. I know at Science Hill High School, I created one of these forms for the discipline referrals. So a teacher could just fill out a form, have that be a discipline referral, and then based off whatever grade the student was, an email was sent to that assistant principal that dealt with that grade level's discipline. So let's say that you have a request form for parent-teacher conferences that you want to have so your parents can schedule those. Instead of sending home that piece of paper in their planner, having the parent get it, fill it out, put it back in the planner, and get it back to you, in an ideal world, with, let's be honest, isn't going to happen because it might get lost on the way home, or the parent might fill it out, forget to put it back in the folder. I mean, you have all those different things. And at the same time, what you can do with this is you can also send an email notification and say, hey, your parent-teacher conference request just got a new answer. You can log on to them, you can see, oh, this person needs to have a conference with me, and you can call them or set. If you go down the wormhole of coding that you can go through, you can select a response destination. So let's say that you have 8 different periods throughout your day if you're teaching middle school. So let's say you have 6 different classes, and you want to have a different form for each class because it's inside of, let's say, a Google Classroom or a Canvas course, and you want to have that. If you click Select Response Destination, you can have all of those go onto the same spreadsheet if you'd like. So if you want to go through that, you can select that destination for your information that's coming in. So if you have 6 different classes forms, you can have it all go onto the same parent-teacher sheet. So you can go ahead and do that. If you're not sure where they're being sent, because sometimes I'm like, I know I made a spreadsheet, I don't know where. And the top here, if you click on that, it'll open up what spreadsheet that it's going to be going to. So these are all the answers that we've had for that pre-session questionnaire to go through that. But if I look at that untitled form, right now it's just working on questions. All the stuff I showed you was under that responses tab. So I don't have any responses to this form, so there's nothing for me to work with. That's why I like to use that pre-session questionnaire to show you guys what some data that it might be. So if I look on to what's next, because I don't tend to follow a script very well. Let's see. Okay, so we all have that fear of what happens if these disappear. I mean, because let's be honest, we can go through that. We can go through, and I see a comment in there about school elections. Absolutely, you can do that with this. You know, right away, you don't have to Scantrons or do the bubble sheets or that stuff. I mean, and we're going to go through some examples of how you could use this in your classroom and also on a school level for you school leaders. I know that we had a principal in here. I know we have some district leaders as well. So we can look at that as well. I know for myself, having it for parent-teacher conferences would have been a huge game changer because that saves all that paper. If they have to request a time, I can go back and I can work with them. But what you can also do is, let's say that I wanted to use this again. So for the next session I do, I'm going to use the same pre-session questionnaire, but I don't want to lose the answers that are already in there. What you can do is you can go ahead and click that snowman and you can download the responses. So for the example of school elections, let's say that someone was like, well, I know that, but I don't trust it. Can I see that? Or I don't really believe that that's what happened. You can download that spreadsheet. And what it's going to do is it's going to download you just a Microsoft Excel file that gives you a copy of the spreadsheet. So in here, I'm going to go ahead and open this up because it opened up on a different screen and I'll bring it over. But what it's going to do is it's going to allow you to download those in a way that you can save it. So you can save it to any file folder. You can save it to any of those things. I know a lot of data management programs don't accept in Google Sheets for a data source, but they do accept in Microsoft Excel. So you can look at that as well. So all of these are the responses that are on that form. So if I go into that form, I can now go ahead and delete all of the responses, but I have my backup copy saved of everyone's response so I can go back and refer to that at any time. So let's say that you have, I know we're going to be emphasizing social economic learning for that way for our students coming in. Sorry, social emotional learning. Sorry, I misspoke that. Let's say you want to have a daily check-in where all it is a form and it's got 5 smiley faces on it. How are you doing today? You can go through that and you can delete the responses every day, but you can use that same form over and over and over and over again in order to use that. So that way we can go through it. So since I've deleted the responses, if you notice, we've gotten one more in and they're a middle school teacher. So even though I deleted the responses and downloaded them, that happened. But that response is not on this downloaded spreadsheet. So you can have these separated out by days or by weeks or by class periods. But at the same time, if you look at this, at the very bottom here, there's that newest response we had. So they're not using it currently. They're a music teacher. So, I mean, you can go through and you can look at that. So as you can tell, these are live. So this is a live thing that keeps on coming in. And unless you ask for a name, this is completely anonymous. So if you want to project up how students are doing or how they're feeling, or if you're noticing trends on an assignment, you can do it in that way as well. So if I look at my form, blank one, just so we can kind of go through this, the next part I want to look at is right here, is this palette. So this artist palette is your theme. So Google has a lot of themes already built in. So if you look at this, you can have all these different ones. You can have illustrations. You can have birthday. So let's say that you want to have your students fill out an about me, about themselves. You can have them fill out a form and collect all that information and not have to keep track of those papers. You can have it on a spreadsheet. You can work through it that way. But if I go work in school, I know when I taught biology and chemistry, this Erlenmeyer flask one was the one that I always used the most just because I thought it was cool looking. If you put that on there, it's going to change this top logo and it's going to change your color palette. So it changes the colors of your form, it changes all that. It really makes it a little bit more presentable. So I know at our school, instead of this, so if I click back here, you can upload a theme if you know how to find those. Or if you have any photo, you can upload that photo and it'll make a color palette based off that. So if I'm doing one for Johnson City Schools and I'm uploading that as our banner, if you notice, once it becomes the banner, our color palette changes over here on the theme and the background color to match the colors that are in that image. So you can have your own ones, you can have your school specific ones, and it changes those colors in there as well. So I know when I went from high school to elementary, I wasn't ready for the change from really efficient to really cute looking stuff, because with all the fonts and all the different clip art and that, it was a whole different world for me. But this way you can kind of have some more of that personalization, and you can make the forms look different from each other. So you can tell if the student's working on the right one or not. So that's what that artist palette can do for you. I'm going to skip this eyeball for now until we get some more information in here, but I'm going to go towards this gear. So this gear is your settings. So your settings are where really the rubber hits the road for how your form is set up. So I know in our system, Johnson City Schools, and that's the account I'm logged on to this browser as, so those are the settings that I'm going to follow. It is automatically set up to restrict to users in Johnson City Schools. If I left this on and sent out my pre-session questionnaire to you, and you're outside of Johnson City Schools, it would pop up to you do not have access for this document. I cannot tell you how many times I sent this out to students before. I didn't uncheck that, and I got about 30 to 40 emails right away saying that they were requesting access. So with that, it's always my practice to uncheck that, simply because students don't always know how they're logged onto the computer unless it's a Chromebook. If they're on a laptop, they could have had somebody else logged on. Their parents are using the device. So, I mean, it just really gets rid of one of those hurdles. You can collect email addresses from people that are signed in. So whenever that, you can go ahead and do that. But they need to be signed in to their browser. So up here, if you notice, I'm signed into my browser as Aaron Wood with my @jcschools.org email address. If, however, they're signed into this browser is the email address that you're going to get. So if your students share devices and you're collecting email addresses, you're going to get the same email address for everybody who uses that computer unless they miraculously remember to log out, which a lot of our students, I know in my experience, always forget to log out of the actual browser. They'll log out of the computer just fine, but the browser, not so much. You can do response receipts. So you can say, would you like a copy of this? So I always have this on whenever I'm doing, the parent-teacher conference request. So they get sent an email with what they requested, because they're like, well, I don't remember what time I said, or I don't remember what day. This will send them one if they request it, or you can automatically send them one, which is what I normally do. So this is like your registration form coming back to you. You can fill out that form and you can get it sent back to you. If you're doing this as like a quiz, I'm going to check these just so it's back to normal. You can limit the responses to one. So you can limit people to one response. But there's a caveat that happens when you limit that. When you limit that, they will be required to sign into Google. So unless you're going through a learning management system where they're automatically signed in through that, if you're just sending this out to parents, or if it's like a stable link on a website that you have, if you click limit one response, they will have to sign into their Google account. That way they can track who's actually done it or not. You can actually have it to where they can edit their answers after they submit. So after they submit their answer and they go through that, they can go back and edit that. I know that what I've done before is for like a pre-assessment, I've given out a quiz really quick to my students saying, okay, here's 5 basic questions. And as we go through the lesson, I need you to go back and edit your answers to the correct answers. And I expect all of you to have correct answers by the end of the lesson. So they can go back in and edit their answers as the lesson goes on. It's like, oh man, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Or, I thought the plot was going to end like this. It's not. Pete the cat really did save the day, or however it was. You can go back and have them edit those. But one thing that you should know is once they edit it, you do not see your original anymore. So that original answer was gone. So what I typically have them do is I have them do a before and after. So I don't let them edit after they submit, but I do let them be able to submit it more than once. So they can keep on trying until they get that 100 or until any of those other things. I know that we're in a generation of instant gratification and instant knowing if they had the right answer or not. And, you give that quiz, and I was guilty of this when I was a student, that I would take that quiz and say, okay, graded. I want to know what my answer is right away. But what you can do is you can add on, see the summary charts and text responses. So they can see, oh man, out of the 10 kids who have taken this so far, 9 of them had A and I had B. Or they had this, or you have, what do you think, what do you predict it's going to look like? And that way, they don't see the other answers until they submit their response. So with a lot of different technologies, they'll look at it. Excuse me. I know with Nearpod, sometimes they'll see that chart start to pop up and they're like, oh, everyone else is answering A, I need to put in A. But if you let them see the summary charts after they do their response, that's when some of that self-assessment can really start to happen of, oh man, I was way off on number 1, or I was way off on number 2, or, other people's answers are kind of projecting kind of towards mine. And you can see that if you turn on those summary charts and text responses. So that's what we have for the general tab. And guys, I know I go really fast. If there's something that comes up or there's something that's like, oh, I wish you would spend a little bit more time on that. We are in a little bit of a smaller group. So if that becomes the case, you are more than welcome to go ahead and send something through the chat feature here on Zoom. And I'll try to respond to that and work that in as we go. Or if I need to go back, I have no problem going back and doing that as well. So if I'm going too fast or if something's happening, just go ahead and keep on using that chat feature so that way I can go ahead and keep up to track if you guys have any questions as we go forward. Presentation is going to be the settings for what kind of things your students are seeing. So if you notice at the top, there's a progress bar. So if you're going to do this as a quiz, for example, and you want students to know how many they have, you can have a progress bar on there, and it'll show you as it goes through how many percentage and that kind of stuff your students have done off of all of the questions that are there. So that kind of gives them a light at the end of the tunnel sometimes if you have a quiz that's on there, because sometimes I feel like there's millions of questions and they're never going to end. But if you have a progress bar, that allows them to do that as well. Shuffle question order. So shuffling the question order is really good for classroom assignments, because I know that, as a high school testing coordinator, when we had 2 students sit next to each other on the computer and they're taking the same quiz at the same time with the same questions in the same order, sometimes the students like to have some wandering eyes, as I like to call it, and look at what's going on next to them and maybe select the same thing. Shuffling the question order means that they all have different questions that they're working on at different times. So that way you can kind of help that process and make your results a little bit more reliable. But your spreadsheet will always report it out in the same way. And your responses will always report it out. So even though their questions are shuffled, your data is still consistent with how it's coming through. You don't have to resort that based off that shuffling. And then there's also show link to submit another response. So let's say that you are filling out different information. So I know for me, when I figured out how Google Forms could do it, I had already done an About Me paper for my students of, what is the best address? What is the best phone number? What is the best, what's your birthday? Stuff like that. I didn't want to have the students go back and do that again because I already had that information. So what I did was I just made a form and I just did show link to submit another response. And so then let's say that I'd say, what is your birthday? And I go ahead and I edit that so my spelling doesn't go nuts. If you notice, it automatically updated the question to ask for a date. So if I preview this of what they're going to see, they're going to see what is your birthday. So I'll go ahead and I go on here. Let's say that my birthday is January 1st, 2009. And I go ahead, that's the birthday. When I click submit, it's going to pop up this. Your response has been recorded. Would you like to submit another response? I can do that. And as a teacher, I can go through and I can input all my data that way as well. I know that as a testing coordinator, I used forms to collect student testing accommodations. So case managers had all the different options. They had student name, what classes they were in, stuff along those lines, and then click submit another response for the multiple students on their caseload. So I could have all that information in one place at one time. If you don't have that on, it just takes you to that finished screen and then you have to exit. You can reload the page and submit it in that way, but this just kind of gives you a nice little workaround for that. So if you notice on responses, I have one response and it's January 2009 and it's the first. So that just shows you how quick that data comes in with that. But if I go to presentation, I know for me that I like to, when you guys filled out your form for the pre-session questionnaire, what it said on there was, thank you for the information. I'm excited to work with you today. Making it more personal, making it go through like that. What you can also do is if, let's say that breakout boxes are a big thing that's currently happening in education. I think they're awesome, to kind of do that amazing race and break out all these different things. What you can do is in here, you can put a hyperlink to another form. So let's say that, congratulations, you got it right. Go ahead and click onto this to move on. And you can put in, if I go to send here, it's going to give me a link. I can go ahead and copy that link and put that link in that confirmation message. So if I put any hyperlink in there, I can do that. I click save. And let's say that, for example, I'm a student, I'm going through, and I answer all of this. So I'm pre-K, I am an assistant principal. I feel like I'm pretty familiar. I am using it. I use all of this. So I use forms, sheets, slides, add-ons. Why did you sign up? Because I'm presenting it. What's one thing you got out of it? Better information. So if I go and I click submit to that, what's going to come through is my wording and then a link to that. So if I click that, now I've moved on to that second form that we have. You can build breakout boxes based off the hyperlinks that you put in. So you can put whatever you want in there. You can put your email address. Be like, thank you for requesting a parent-teacher conference. If you have any other questions, please reach me at your email address. You can put that in there. But the way to change that is underneath those settings and then presentation. And your confirmation message is what they are going to see when they fill out that form. So that gives them a little affirmation. If you're working on this as students and this is your bell ringer, you can put their instructions of what they need to do next on there. Be like, thank you for finishing your bell ringer. Please take out your accelerated reader books and begin reading that. Or please take out your binder and go ahead and work through these things. Or please go ahead and get started on your day. So you can use this as a start of the class activity with directions for the students of what they need to do next. Be like, okay, did you get 4 out of 10? If not, please click submit another response and try again. And you can go around those as well. So your confirmation message is the first thing that they're going to see after they submit your form. And then a lot of teachers are starting to use this as quizzes. So forms is a great way to take on quizzes, especially in the Google Classroom. So if Google Classroom is your learning management system for your students, this is a great way to turn this into a quiz. So unless you turn this on, you'll just get responses. It won't, quote unquote, grade anything. So it won't award points or change any of that stuff. But once you turn that on, now your questions, you can do grading. You can do stuff along those lines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go back to my Untitled form, and let's go ahead and add in some questions of, what is the function, or what is, let's say, 3 plus 3. So you can go through, what color comes in the rainbow after orange. So you can go through that. Now, with this, what is 3 plus 3? What I'm going to do is I don't want this to be multiple choice. I want the students to have to type in their answer. So I want it to be a short answer question is what that's going to be. And then what comes in the color after orange? What color comes in rainbow after orange? I want that to be a short answer as well. So this question doesn't work for me in this. I don't really want that to be in there. If you notice this trash can, you can delete that question and it's out of there. So that's no longer on there. So let's go ahead and turn this into a quiz. And I'm going to go ahead and, okay, so they have a lockdown browser mode. So you can have this to where the students aren't able to go onto any other screen once they click the link and open this up. But there's a couple things that have to happen. Number one, the students have to be on a Chromebook. So it has to be the only browser that they have the opportunity to open. If you're using a laptop of any other way besides a Chromebook, there's no way to lock down the individual browser on that. So this only happens on a Chromebook. And also, it has to be a Chromebook that is controlled by your district. So if a student buys their own Chromebook and brings it in, it will not lock down their browser as well. So with that lockdown browser, it has to be a Chromebook, and it has to be one that your school has that's running on the same filters and settings and all that that your district is using. You can look at how quick do you want them to know how they did. Do you want them to know immediately after they submit? So do you want them to have their grade right away? Or let's say that you wanted to go through that, you can go ahead and say later. So you can have this quiz open all of the class period and then submit it to grade. Now, if you want it to be later, they will have to have some way to give you an email address, because what they'll do is they will email those students their results or their performance on that quiz. So if they're working on shared devices or any stuff like that, that could get a little bit tricky, but you can also have it be immediate. So I'm going to leave it as immediately because for self-assessment reasons, I feel like that's the best approach to go. And then it says, what do you want them to see? Do you want them to see what questions they missed? So do you want them to see, which ones of those questions they missed? Do you want them to see what the correct answers are? So let's say I want them to see which ones they missed, but this is a review for an upcoming assessment or a benchmark or checkpoint or unit test. I want to be able to take it 20 times, but I don't want them to know what's right. So I don't want them to know so they can keep on practicing and finding those correct answers. If you have this checked on, I'll show you that they will be able to see every correct answer that's going on there. And do you want them to see how many points that question is worth? So you can see, this one's worth 4 points, this one's worth 5 points, stuff along those lines. So I'm going to leave all of these on currently, just so we can see, and then we're going to go through these examples where I take those off so you can see what's different. So I'll click Save. And once you notice is now that I have it as a quiz, this answer key button has popped up. So answer key. What is one correct answer that I could take for this? So I could take that, 6 is a correct answer because the numerical one. Now, we all know that we have those students who, even though it's numerical, they won't always put down the numerical answer. So let's say that they typed in 6. You can have that answer choice as being correct as well. We have some students who mess up typing, so you can have SXI as that they can do that. Or some students like me with my OCD nature, I know that I would say equals 6 because right now there's no equal sign on there and that would bother me. If I only had this first 6 as the only answer choice, that is the only thing that would be counted as correct. This is like the old Scantron sheets where if you had that answer bubbled in and you kind of erased it and put it in the other one, but you didn't erase good enough, that's what's going to be given. So that's that. So if you're giving a short answer response, and let's say that it was George Washington as an answer, you might be recommended to put in George Washington, G. Washington, Washington, stuff along those lines. Or maybe it's better for you to have a select option or a multiple choice question that could help manage that as well. So you can do that. And right now, I'm going to select all other answers besides those are incorrect. So those are the only answers that I'll be accepting are correct. So the number 6, the word 6, the misspelled 6 in case I typed it wrong, and equal 6. Now, how many points is this going to be worth? It defaults to 0 points. So if you just go ahead and answer all that and you leave it, it's still going to have 0 points as an answer point as a question. I can go ahead and I can go down. What color in the rainbow comes after orange? So I know that for mine, if I go ahead and do this, I'm going to say, so it's Roy G. Bibbs, so I know yellow. I'm going to put yellow like that. Let's go ahead. Yellow, if they think it's like the soda, like mellow yellow, and they go through that, I could put a Y for that. So all of these are potential correct answers. If it's not any of those, I'm going to mark those as incorrect. And then let's say I put 1 point. Now, for this one, if you notice down here, you also have this add answer feedback. So you can prompt the students for some rationales as to, okay, what do I want to say if they get it wrong? Let's just say I put Roy G. Biv in there because that's the color, not Rot G. Biv. Oops. Roy G. Biv. So let's say that that's the feedback I want to give the students as a reminder. You can do that. Now in here, you could go ahead and put a hyperlink to something. So let's say that's like, oh, you didn't get this one right. Let's go back to this Google Doc that has the information about it. Or you could link to a video that shows them the correct way to go through the colors of the rainbow by doing a YouTube video. So let's do that. So we have the Jack Hartman song, The Colors of the Rainbow. Let's say if they get it incorrect, they're going to have Roy G. Biv and a link to look at that video as well. So if I click save for that, I can change which answers I give feedback to that too. But since there's only fill in the blank, you can go, it doesn't necessarily go through like that. So if I send this out to my students, this is what theirs is going to look like. So if you notice it says email address, that's because right now I have it set to where I'm going to release the results to students later. So actually, let me go back and I'm going to take that off because that's not a good setup to start off for this one. So I'm going to not collect email addresses. And I'm going to go and I'm going to preview this. So what is 3 plus 3? Let's say that I have, the old joke growing up was 33. So 3 plus 3 is 33. And what color comes after? Let's say that I go ahead and I get that yellow one. So I'm going to go ahead and hit submit. And the way that I have it set up is I can click my view my score right away. And it goes through and look, because I had a capital Y, it counted that wrong. So that might be one of those reasons that we have to put in those multiple different answer options, because if you click all other answers besides this are wrong, any different thing that's on there will mark that as incorrect. So I took that to practice. So I'm saying, okay, I can't have that. I need that to be fixed. I can go through here and add in a correct answer of yellow. That way I know that when my students take this, they can have that the right way. So if I go through and let's say that I'm a student taking this and 3 plus 3 equals 6, and what color comes after? Let's say I finally get that yellow and I submit my answer. I can view my score. And what pops up is the correct. So right now I have, it pops up that. It pops up if the answers are correct. And you also get that feedback. So that way if I need to go back and refresh that, I've got that set up. So let's change a couple of the settings of this. So if I go to the settings, and let's say that for the quizzes, I don't want them to see what the correct answer is, but I want them to see the missed questions, and they take that. So what is 3 plus 3? 7. And what color comes after? Let's say they go violet. And I hit submit. I want to view my score. All it does is it tells me what questions I got wrong. It doesn't tell me the correct answer because I don't have that access to it in order to do that. So one of the questions is how does Microsoft Forms compare to this? The biggest difference that I have personally found is that Google has websites for everything and Forms are more of a static file. So you can look at it that way. So these can be easier to send out than what a Microsoft form could be, from my experience, but that could also be incorrect. And so then you can also have it to where they don't get wrong answers and they don't get those types of things as well. So that's how you would set up a quiz in a Google form and go through that and kind of set up those things. Structuring my questions, let's say that you, for high school math, you wanted to have different sections. So you want to have a calculator and non-calculator. You can click this little bar and it can go ahead and have section 2. So after section 1, do you want them to continue that? Do you want to go ahead? Do you want them to submit and then go to section 2? So you can kind of have your structure set up that way as well. You can add in text. So you can add in a title and a description here. You can add in an image. So you can go through a Google image search. And let's say that you're looking at, frog anatomy. And you have this as your image. You can insert an image and then have multiple questions after that based off what is number 1, what is number 2, and so on and so forth. If you're going to be gone for a day and you're using this as a sub, you can go ahead and actually select a video off YouTube. Go through what was the main idea, what was this. You can do read alouds, things along those lines. So there's a lot of multimedia that you can incorporate as well going through this at the same time. So if you notice, I made this Google form, and this is always saved on my drive as soon as I create it. I can move it to a shared folder. So let's say we want to have a common assessment for our first grade team or so on and so forth. You can do it that way as well, so you can share those at the same time. The one biggest mistake that people make with Google Forms is when they share it, they share this web address. That is not what you want to share, because what that shares is that shares what the actual form is to create it. You don't want the students to log in to create the form. You want the students to log in to use the form. So there's 2 different ways that you can do that. Number 1 is you can click preview, and then that gives you the web address for the form that can be used. Or on this send button, it gives you these options as well. So you can send, this is just the link that you would need to send. You can shorten it to make it look prettier. You can send an email right away with the subject, and you can type that. You can include the form in an email and all those different things. You can send it as a Facebook post or as a Twitter post, so it'll auto format that way as well. But if you send just this link, so if I copy this link and I'm going to open up an incognito browser so that this simulates if somebody else was on my computer, and I go to this, what's going to pop up is that, but it's because I have it set up to where anybody can access it. If I had it locked down, then that wouldn't necessarily be the case. So that's kind of a quick overview for Google Forms for the different aspects you can use. And I've got all the steps in the presentation you have a copy of, showing the different settings, the forms, and then this is also being recorded, so you can see those steps that I took as well in order to go back and review that. Some things that I have used Google Forms for are quizzes, tickets out the door, progress monitoring for students, surveys to see how they're doing and things that are going on, peer reviews of each other's work, so how they feel like they did. So if you have students working on a rubric, you can make the rubric a form, and they can grade somebody else's paper without actually having to write on the paper. I use this for my walkthroughs for evaluations. I use a form that I create. Missing assignments, you can go ahead and say who's missing what, so you can have a running record of what's missing. Like I already mentioned before, staff and student contact info. And then for the scavenger hunt, one thing about the questions is if I go ahead and I'm just going to add a blank question here at the bottom, you can go ahead and have them upload a file. So you can say, okay, please submit your science presentation to this form once you have completed, so I know that you're ready for me to look at it. What that'll do is that'll have them link to their Google Drive and go ahead and do that as well. Or you can have them, write a response on a Google Doc and upload that for their answer. So you can limit the types of files. So you can have documents, spreadsheets, PDFs, videos, all those other things. You can have how many files. They can have a maximum. It's either 1, 5, or 10. And you can do file size. So I know that, let's say that I'm working on research papers. The only things I want them to send me are a spreadsheet. So I only want them to send me, for a presentation, a document, a presentation, and that's about it, because I don't want them to send me a video, any of that other stuff, and this will limit what they can submit to those file types. So that way you can have that, and that way you can go through that as well. Now, these ones won't auto-grade. You'll have to go back in and grade these later based off what they're doing, unless it's just the fact that they've uploaded one. You can give it like a participation point if they like that. For the question in the bottom corner, unless this is over, they are not required to answer it. So unless you click that button over, it's not a required question. So if I look at, so if I go back and I go ahead, and right now I've got one required question and one not, and I go to submit another response, right now I've got it set up to where the question, but you would have a little asterisk next to those different ones that are required for that. So I never actually wrote a question here, so I'd say, you know, presentation upload. And I go and click off, and then I bring up this form. It's just being finicky on me. So with that, you would have a little asterisk next to it saying that you need to upload that or go through that. But for sheets, maneuvering and manipulating sheets is probably one of the toughest things when it comes to beginning with Google Sheets. So I want to spend the last 10 minutes or so that we have on this before I open it up to questions to show you how or some different ways. And each one of these links is a YouTube video showing you exactly the step-by-step of how to do each of the things that I'm going to talk about as we go through this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up a sample data set. So let's say that I went ahead and had this, and we have some different things going on. So that's not the one I was looking for. So let's do a different one. But if you notice for this Google Sheets, it already has all the titles of the different questions that you have, and it has all the different things that you can work with at the same time. So as you look at those titles, you can see those are the questions of what's going on with your current data. So here's one that's a little bit easier to start off with. That one was a little bit more advanced. So let's say that we went ahead and had this and we wanted to compare school scores. So let's say we have different schools, the year, their average score, the population, and their funding. What this does is within this, you can do a lot of really, really cool data analysis really quick just based off this form. So let's say that, you know, I want to go ahead and I want to find a specific school for a specific year. So I just want to see, okay, I need to see what AIS, or let's say that's the Appalachian Independent Schools. If I hit Control F, I can find that. Now, let's say that their name has changed. So a lot of things are changing names, a lot of things are going on. If I hit that Snowman, I have the option to replace that. So instead of AIS, what if I want to just call them the Appalachian for that, so I can change that? Which sheet do I want to change it on? Just this one? How perfect do I have to match it? So I can go in, I'm going to go ahead and replace all of those. So replace value on all the sheets, yes. I changed 6 of them, and if you notice back in my original data, now I have Appalachian there for a name. So what you can do with this is, let's say that you have that and you got your data in a different way and you want to change some structure of it, you can find and replace that data really quick. So I know that for some of our teachers, you know, 90%, they want that to show the letter B in their grade book. So they go ahead and they can change that 90 to a B by doing this replace. But Control F, you can find an individual student. You can find any of those things just by searching within there. Now, I know that whenever I go ahead and I search through different data, one of the most annoying things is when I scroll down, my headers are gone. So I can't stand when I forget which column is which one, you know, which one's my school name, which one's my year. I'm not sure what this 80 means. If you notice up here in the upper left-hand corner, there's these dark gray lines. So these dark gray lines allow you to freeze rows or columns. So if I go ahead and take this hand and I drag down this hand to include row number 1, as I scroll down, that first row will stay there. So that'll freeze that so I don't out-scroll those headers. Now let's say that I wanted to keep my school names, but let's say there was a lot more data as we go out. I could just drag that over to A, and now as I scroll across, we have all that. So I know when I was looking at students' ACT scores, I could keep their name there on the left and scroll through their different subparts and have the column titles at the top. But in order to do that, the way you do that is by drawing these thick gray lines over to freeze those frames. Now there's also a way to go ahead and do that from the tools. So if I go data, I believe it's there. So if I go ahead and I say, you know, A, format, I want to go ahead and I want to freeze 1 row, 2 rows, up to current rows. So you can go ahead and select all the ones you want to freeze. What it will not allow you to do is you cannot just freeze average score. So you can't freeze one that's in the middle of something that's going on. All right, I'm trying to go through to see. Okay. If I go through here, if I look at student data, let's say that I had them take a survey and I went through this, and let's say I want to do some quick data analysis. If I just hover and select all of this, and I hit this Explore button in the corner, this Explore button allows you to create a lot of different data without having to know any formulas whatsoever. It's a huge game changer. Let's say that I want to know how many males are in debate. So as I type, I go ahead and I get that information. I can click that, and I just hit enter. What it does is it auto builds a formula for you to create that. So I can go and I can see that formula, and it shows me what that would be as that goes through. So let's say that I want to, so I just don't want that. Let's say, you know, I delete that off there, and I go back, and it suggests different charts you can have. So I want to have a chart distribution of the class level. So I click that. And I want to go ahead and I want to insert that chart into my spreadsheet. And right there, you have the different types of charts. You can go ahead, I want a column chart, I want a pie chart, or I want a scatter chart. And you can go through, and just by hovering the data, you can select any of the different things that you want to do with that data. So, you know, or another thing that could be on here is, you know, how many students are in each extracurricular activity. It shows me that, but I want a chart instead. So that's the count of extracurricular. So I want to know each different extracurricular. I can insert that chart. And now I have that data as well. So you can go ahead and you can edit this. And then once you have that, you can resize it and all those different things. One thing that I like about this is if I go ahead, if you notice on the back here, this creates separate sheets for those formulas. So it shows you a running total of what's going on there. So you can have that at the same time. Now, a lot of the ones that we go to or that we get, we have the columns that are really short. So in order to do that, you have 2 different options. So you can form that. So this, whenever you get this arrow, if you double click, it extends it out to where that data will fit. Or if you summarize it down and you select it, this little button right here, text wrapping, that's when you can choose. Do I want to clip off what I see? Do I want it to overflow? Or do I want to wrap my text? So that way it creates those different ones. And if you notice these little buttons on top, these are filters. And this is the last thing that I'm going to talk about for today because everything else is inside of the presentation for all the videos. But whenever you click that filter, you can filter out, okay, I don't want to count in 2010 or 2011. I only want 12 and 13. So I can do that, and that's all that I see. Or, you know, I want to clear all that. Or let's say that I want to only count, you know, ones that are above 2020, or I want to sort these. You can go through and you can filter out the data that you want to see. So if you have all of your students on there for different blocks, you can filter out your data to show you what first block, second block, third block, so on and so forth. And then, like I said, sorry, the very last thing is if you want to format this, you can do conditional formatting just like you can in Microsoft Excel. So if it's above an 80, you can have it be green or so on and so forth. You can also alternate colors, so you can have alternating rows to make it easier to read across. And you can also clear any formatting as it comes through. But I know that I go extremely fast. In the presentation, like I said, each one of these is a link to a YouTube video that briefly shows you how each one of those things occurs and happens. On the bottom here, I've also shown you different videos of how to do pivot tables and graphs if you want to go more in depth with those aspects as well. And then the very, very last thing I added in there was Autocrat, which is an add-on that I use, but it's the different ways to do that to where it auto sends emails. And I'm more than happy to help you guys out with that if you get into that. But that is the #1 add-on that I use. So I use that for different things like discipline referrals, certificate of attendances, evaluations, things along those lines. So I don't have to email it out after, it just automatically emails it for me. And these are the different steps that it takes in order to create that for you as you go through with this, and then a video that walks you through that as well. So I know that we have gone through a lot of different things, but I hope that there's been at least 1 or 2 things that you're like, man, I could have been doing this the whole time and not have to have those different papers or those different things go through that. And I'm also willing to stay on here for the next, I've got it blocked out for the next 30 minutes as well in order to answer questions or different things that you would like for me to go over, things that I might have gone too fast through, or things that you want a little more in-depth talk to. That will be recorded that you can go back and review. But Mr. Payne has sent out a link for you guys to go ahead and fill that out to receive your certificate, and also give me some feedback as to, you know, some things that I can continue to do better, some things that you wish that I would have done a little bit differently, so I can continue to improve this and adapt this. But I appreciate you guys being with me. It doesn't feel like we've been together for an hour, but of course I've been the one doing the talking, so it's probably a lot different for me. But if there's anything I can do, I'm more than willing to hang out here and answer any questions that you have through chat. Or at this point, if you would like to unmute yourself, you could also ask me a question that way as well. But I appreciate you guys' time. I appreciate you being with me. All my contact information is on that very first slide, and please, please, please reach out if there's ever any way I can help support you in your efforts in the classrooms.
Thank you so much, Erin.
Thank you.
Erin, that was awesome. Thank you. It was really great.
More than welcome. And like I said, if
virtual
there's
session.
questions, please go and ask. I think I talked over you, Ms. Stewart. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Thank you for attending this virtual summer session, Institute session. Please take our 1-minute survey, and it will allow us to reflect on your thoughts about the session, because we're always looking for ways to improve. And it will also help us collect information if you'd like a certificate of attendance for the session. As Erin said, it's the survey has already been dropped in the chat. So at this time, if you'll fill that out, and this will help us to make sure you receive the correct certificate, and fill out the survey before you leave the meeting. So again, thank you so much for attending. We appreciate your time.
If any of you all have any specific questions, please feel free to ask those. I can go ahead and go through that. Or if you want to send me through the chat, we can do that as well. But I understand I probably overwhelmed you with a lot of different things to do, but please, please, please reach out through email or through any of those things, and we can go through that and talk through those individual situations again if you have a specific approach or application that you would like to use.
I'd be really interested in seeing how you did your discipline forms and also your walkthrough forms.
All right, so for those, let me go ahead and I'll bring up my walkthrough one because that's one I feel comfortable sharing right away. Let's see. So, okay, I'm bringing it up, dragging it over. Okay, I'm going to share my screen for you. All right, so what I did was there's that TOE observation feedback tool that's been given that we can kind of communicate. So what I did was I created that in a Google form. So I have the different goals and objectives. I have the different things that I can go through. I can go back and I can reflect on this as we go forward. And I have all those different questions. But what I do is I would add a question at the end of, what teacher am I observing? So let's say, so with that, I'm going to have that be a short answer question. And then what I'm going to do is on the spreadsheet that's created from this, that's where I'm going to use Autocrat. So I'm going to go ahead and create a spreadsheet just so I have a blank one that doesn't mess with my data. But under add-ons, whenever it decides to load, I have Autocrat that pops up, and what Autocrat does is from a template, you can merge it and it'll email out that to whatever email address you put in there. So as you go through that Autocrat, what it's going to do is with certain fields and certain thing that's going on. So an example that I can show you is, what's my progress letter? So what I have is I have a blank Google document here. And if you notice, it has these little hyphens, the little carets, and then the information. What I do is once I have this, the spreadsheet that has that information will have these as the titles. And when I click merge, it'll pull that data from there and create multiple different documents. So what you'll need to make is you'll need to make a template of what you want that to look like at the end. And then you can go ahead and have these carets, and that changes the information. So I know for me, I didn't want to write out the names for all the different students that I had to make an RTI report for. So what I did was I just made a spreadsheet of everybody, who their homeroom teacher was and what subject they were in. And whenever I ran this, it went ahead and it created all 70 different student ones without me having to make them one by one. So so for that observation and for the discipline referrals, what I did was I just made a template and linked that to the sheet by using that Autocrat. So the very end of that presentation that you got a link to that got shared to you, look over that as to how to build out those steps, and that will show you how that can get automatically emailed. Because one of the things of Autocrat is if I launch this, sorry, it always takes a second to load that whenever it goes through, is it's going to start to look for those different things. And you have the option of sending emails to people based off of what it runs whenever it gets submitted. So you can have it auto send an email to you, auto send an email to the person who finished it. Or I know that for our conferences, and I think that it might be the same way for these ones, for certificates of participation, this is how we do that. So I don't have to print certificates. This auto creates them just based off their responses to that form. So I would look into that Autocrat to help you save that. That'll take out those steps that you're looking for.
Thank you very much.
And if you get stuck, email me and I'll help you out the best I can. And we can Zoom, or hopefully we can see each other in person soon and I can come by and help you out at the same time. But you know how that works. All right.
Any other questions from our remaining participants? Lynn or Kathy?
That may be it, it looks like.
That's what I was thinking. Aaron, thank you again so much. We're so grateful. These have been
Oh,
great
no problem at
sessions.
all. I'm just glad it's recorded. That way people can go back because I talked to